Yes. So should we go for it? When you said Traor, a trap, were you talking
Traore.
about, yeah, were you talking about this dictators type of chap or
Well, it depends how you would describe him. He's the leader of Burkina Faso,
yeah, I saw
and
that.
so the AES collective of countries, Mali, Niger, and I think probably Togo is joining. I think a lot of people are joining. He took over in a military coup when he was, I don't know, 34 years old or something like that, 33 maybe. And again, it's always hard to tell what's true because there's so much rubbish out there, and it's very hard to distinguish what's true about him and what's not. However, what does appear to be true is that the youth of Africa, which is a massive percentage of the population, are realizing that they've been screwed for all these years by the colonial imperialists. And
Good.
so, to give you a good example, um, when Traore took over, he basically nationalized the gold mines and started building their own gold refinery. The idea is that obviously Africa is probably the wealthiest nation in the world from a resources point of view. Various countries in Africa have now kicked out the military, be it the French or the Americans. And I think there's a wave of positive, peaceful revolution going through Africa, and the leaders, of course, have got this choice. Who do they side with? Do they stick with their old allies, or do they go the Traore route and say, "Look, we're rich and free"? The assassination attempts on him are numerous, obviously.
Yes, let's chat about that then.
The issue for Burkina Faso are the terrorist types who arrive on Toyota trucks with machine guns on the back and on motorbikes. But he's, while I don't like any sort of conflict, violence, that's pretty horrible stuff. But he's using drones and modern technology to overcome the insurgents, which is, it's sort of interesting stuff. I mean, obviously nothing to what's going on in the Middle East right now, but that's another subject. But I'm very hopeful that while there is absolute mayhem going on elsewhere, that there is hope coming from Africa.
Um, yeah, interesting Africa. So I worked in Mozambique in the year 2000, the millennium. I was a volunteer development instructor in post-war Mozambique, and I basically mentored street kids. To be honest, it was more of a learning experience for me than I really think it was for them. But we got on phenomenally well. I had an absolute blast. I'd come off the back of my chronic addiction. And when I started getting my life back together, I did a fire walk. And my fire walk was my kind of pivotal moment where I don't know why. Someone said to me, "Why do you want to go and work in Africa, Chris? I can get you a job with the UN for like 30 grand a year and you want to go and work for free." And you can't explain to someone that's unenlightened what enlightenment is and why there's things in life you just got to do. And had I been paid for it, it would have totally changed the experience. So, cut a long story short, yeah, I did this fire walk and I think I actually raised about 30 quid. In total, I had to raise £2,000 for my education fees for a school in Norway that I went to, and it was a great lesson in taking action, which is what I always say to anyone in any predicament: take action, and the universe will give you back. It's why I've just paid a deposit to climb Everest next year, and I haven't got a penny towards it, Clive. It's because the universe will make it happen for me. So there I was at this studying on top of a mountaintop in Lillehammer, phenomenal experience. And I'm learning a lot of stuff. We had these assignments on the computer we had to tick off in order to get our, you know, qualification. And a couple of interesting ones. One was Gaia theory, which is right up yours and my street, which is it was the first time anyone had ever explained to me. In this case, I had to read a book that everything's connected. That rock over there isn't just a rock. You're not just a human. That you are actually in a symbiotic relationship with that tree over there. You depend on that tree, and it depends on you. And as you breathe out, it's breathing in. You are physically not just this. And it was, again, I'll just use the word fascinating to understand. Well, you know, in Japan, they're growing sea cucumbers. And you think, oh, yeah, great, environmental business, not a problem. Well, the sea bed is white, isn't it? It's essentially light, it's sand, it's yellow. Sea cucumbers are black. If you turn all the sea bottom black, it's going to absorb more heat from the sun. And hence Gaia theory, everything's connected. That system will then interconnect and change all the other systems, a bit like if a butterfly flaps its wings in the Amazon. So this was all like phenomenal growth for me, Clive. And the other thing that we had to learn, of course, was African history. Kwame Nkrumah, who was a young, politically orientated guy in Ivory Coast, I think it was, which before that was it Ghana? Or maybe I've got that the wrong way around. But anyway, he looked at these chaps coming back from the war, and he could see that they'd gone off to fight for the quote unquote white man, being promised all of this, eternal wealth and privilege and esteem. And when they got back to Africa, no, it's back to colonization and essentially slavery by whatever method. And so he led an uprising of all these former Second World War soldiers, and they marched on the parliament. That was the start of the Pan African movement, which subsequently released every country. I believe it's every country in Africa now is independent. I might have that wrong. And some of them were very hesitant to release their colonies. Mozambique fought a very bloody war, or the war for independence, particularly bloody in Mozambique and Angola, backed by the Soviets, of course. And I think it was Algeria, really were, I think it was the last country to fall. They did not want to give up their colony. You had Ian Smith down there in Zimbabwe, who was the white president, was like, you don't want this, folks, believe me, black or white, you do not want black rule overnight. It will not work. What we have done for this nation, da 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 da. And of course, to a point, he was right. Of course, when you say what he had done for this nation, or white, you know, original European settlers or Boers or whatever they did, I always think, you know, the big business, the East India Company, the merchants, they're always going to be there siphoning off everything for themselves. So it's always worth bearing in mind. But Ian Smith, to a degree, he was right. Along come Mugabe. Mugabe, was that his name?
Yeah.
And and he just had a reign of sort of terror, from what I can understand, and torture. And I think Idi Amin was another one. Was it
Yeah,
Idi Amin?
Uganda.
Uganda, wasn't it? Yeah, of course. And utterly fascinating. So I rock up there in Africa. The first thing I did was throw away all the malaria medication, because that's a load of nonsense. Just like we're finding out a lot of mainstream, propaganda in that, medical propaganda is. And my buddy by this time had already been medically discharged from the Marines, because his malaria medication had given him epilepsy. I'm there on this stuff called, what was it called? It was supposed to be the be all and end all of malaria medication. Um, can't remember the name, but I was depressed. I was in Africa. I'd worked so hard for it. I'd come off the back of chronic drug addiction. I got myself sorted. I got the funding together. And there I was in this, it was almost like poverty, but paradise. We were right on the edge of the Indian Ocean. And wasn't feeling it, Clive. So I kicked the malaria medication into touch, and all the locals were like, "You don't take that stuff. If you take that stuff, you're just kind of diluting what is in effect the cure as well. So when you actually do get malaria, it's hard to kill because your body's already, you know, sort of immune to the medicine." So I found that really interesting. I feel sorry for people when they say, "Yes, I'm going to Africa. I've had all my jabs." Oh, fucking hell. You don't know. You don't know what jabs for fairy monsters. What do you think's gonna? So, um, and it was interesting. Within a very short time, Clive, I sacked off the role of development instructor simply because I realized the organization we worked for was nothing more than a enterprise in siphoning off the well-meaning money from people who donated back home. You know, I think this is what's called charities, right? I don't mean all the charities. There's a lot of veterans ones out there. They're doing great work for blokes and lasses that need it. But this one was an absolute, the way it worked, and it had essentially it created a cult in its core of people that wanted to be so well-meaning for Africa that they actually refused to take salary for their work. They just took a toothbrush and you know, maybe a snowball if that was their thing back at the school in Norway, and the rest of the money they chucked in a bucket, thinking that this is going to help sub-Saharan Africa. No, that bucket went to the guy that lived in the Virgin Islands. It really, and none of it, wasn't illegal. What they're doing is they're taking that enormous amount of fundraising every year, they're sticking it in a bank account. Who's to say when they have to pay it to the charity? Who's to say when it has to go to the projects? It can be in that bank account 10 years, Clive. If you've got £60 million in there, that's a lot of, and it's all being invested wisely. This is how the scam works. Um, all the property on the project, they had a teachers college in Tanzania, and they had property on the equivalent of Mozambique's Gold Coast or whatever. They owned every school in their organization, including the one that I was volunteering at. And guess what? The bloody teachers had to pay rent for teaching there. It was clever, Clive. Nothing was illegal. It was just a clever scam. That's it. And once I learnt this, and once I saw that the Coca-Cola lorries installing Coke machines in the villages that didn't even have running water, that was the point where I was like, development. Who am I trying to kid? Another one of the big scams was the AIDS, HIV, all that
Oh
nonsense as
yeah.
well. What we now know was pneumonia rebranded as I call it the bogeyman, the same as the COVID. That was another big thing that was pushed down there, man. What society? It's so simple, this one. Which groups of vulnerable people had jabs pushed on them? Well, Sub-Saharan Africa, because they were the guinea pig for Bill Gates. The gay community, because they went to their doctors and were told, "Hey, you're in a high risk group. All this sex that you're having, unprotected." And the drug sharing, the needle sharing community. because you're sharing needles. So they go to their quacks, and the quack goes, "Oh, you're in a high risk group. Do you know that you can get some free inoculations on the NHS?" Oh, okay. As we all would have said back then. Bang, they're hit up with this stuff that, as we know, starts to destroy the body. And of course, there are also three groups. Think about it, Clive. In sub-Saharan Africa, they live on semolina, a refined carbohydrate that's just dumping masses of glucose into the body, right? They don't have vegetables. They're lucky they had a bit of like goat stew would be drizzled on this chima, they called it. And the chima was what the Americans bought them off with in return for, getting all the business deals in the country. So they're basically living on semolina from America, right? I don't mean beautiful American people. I mean the cabal. This is how they work it through their UN food program and all this other subterfuge. And so you've got a group there that is massively predisposed to illness because their bodies are toxic with this, over acidity of the cells. You've got the gay community that are living it, they're eating junk food, cramming down McDonald's while partying every night, not sleeping, and sniffing poppers and whacking down the E's, like they're going out of fashion. And then you've got the drug sharing community who they're just not eating at all because I know, I've met a lot of problematic heroin users. They don't eat. They wipe their ass on newspaper because you don't buy a toilet roll when that money can go to the dealer. I'm not exaggerating. When you watch Train Spotting, very accurate reflection from my own experience, right? And so they're not eating at all, and they're doing God knows what to their body, and probably surviving on bloody tea and coffee or something. So again, you've got three terribly unhealthy groups that have all been interfered with by big pharma, right? And what happens when they party too much or the body starts breaking down, what we know is pneumonia. They go to the quack, and the quack goes, "Oh, that nice Mr. Fauci." Yes, same guy, folks. The same, very same guy. He's come up with this test that you have to do. It's called the PCR test. So of course they do this test, and what do they get told? You've got the big illness with the little name, and you're gonna die unless you take this shit, which is definitely going to kill you, right? This hideous toxic poison, which they're convinced if I don't take this, me bloody white cell count or me what, and complete fear-based narrative. And as we know, if you get ill, look at the animal kingdom, you go and rest, you stop eating for a few days, let your body empty itself out and take the stress off your system, let everything resettle and balance, and you drink water to flush out the acid and the toxins. And again, hidden knowledge, and the human body is so amazing. I'm 55, and I rode across the Atlantic this year, and I'm going to climb Everest next year. I go out running every morning, Clive, and I'm so grateful. I'm so fast at running now as well. I'm as fit. I'm better at it than I ever was in the Marines as an 18-year-old. So yeah, so there I am in Africa. I thought, sod this. Do you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to meet the kids in the morning. We'll go fishing on the beach. I'll go up to the villages in the evening. I'll dance around the fire, drinking a local rum. Bloody hell, that was strong. We found one place. There was a complete no drinking and no drugs rule at this organization. because they attracted a lot of people like myself that had had problems with addiction. And it was a great rule, but obviously you have to be at the right time in your life to abide, with rules like that. And I wasn't ready. So I was great in Norway. I didn't drink, didn't smoke, whatever. We used to do cake and tea, and it was bloody wonderful. We'd have we performed opera around Scandinavia. We'd have like group evenings where one group would put on a play or comedy, or we'd make fun of the teachers at the school and stuff. It was great. But in Africa, Bob come back. Bob's a nice English guy. He was a pig farmer. He's got clutch and a bottle of rum. I'm like, how much do you pay for that in the supermarket downtown? They're charging like $4 for it or something. Meticash it is in Mozambique. And he's like, oh, 50 cents. I'm like, whoa, that was dangerous, Clive. That just basically meant I drank rum, rum mixed with sterilized milk, the long life milk, and coffee and sugar. That was the mixer. Because you can't buy like squash and cordial and fruit juice there. So that was that. That's what. And I wandered up to the local village with one of the school kids. And I always remember one of the guys that I'd taken over the project from, a guy called Owen, Irish guy, who'd been there before. I remember he put a bulk email to everyone at the school, which was naughty of him, but obviously he'd done his time by then, and he was a free man. And he went, folks, good luck in Mozambique for the next 6 months. By the way, if you want the best weed, just ask the kids. So I said to one of my students, he was about 14 when I say kid, um, he's like, yeah, come with me. Takes me up into the village. We lived in a little compound in this little white bungalow, very, very basic, netting on the doors and stuff. And we overlooked the sea, Clive. It was amazing. In the morning, we'd go out and sit with our cup of tea on the veranda, and the fishermen would be going out in their canoes and they'd all be singing. This was Africa. This is like what I watched as Tarzan as a kid. It was beyond amazing. It was a dream world. You had this escarpments with jungles on top. It was just phenomenal. There was no infrastructure. The school they managed to get some kind of Wi-Fi sorted. It wasn't Wi-Fi back then, was it? It was like, cable. It took about 45 minutes to get online. That's how, anyway, yeah, I decided I'm just going to hang out with the kids. So I've got my source of cheap booze, I've got my source of weed, and that's all I did. I went and painted the classrooms rather than teaching them. I didn't want to do anything for this organization. It was criminal. But on the other hand, I didn't want to go back to England because I escaped my addiction sentence. And that was the experience of Africa. And just saying this to you, Clive, I'm remembering this stuff from 25 years ago, aren't I? It was the millennium I was there. What does that say about learning stuff and reading books, Gaia theory, Pan African movement? You know, this stuff just like it's in there now. It's just part of my whole enlightenment experience. And when I see young people and they just play on a tablet or on their phone or Xbox, and yeah, does make you think there's going to be dark times before it gets better, because at the moment it's definitely Sodom and Gomorrah. It's yeah. You can just see that everyone's lost, everyone's scared. Men now aren't men. They're just whatever they look to the side and see what the blokes next to them's doing, and they just copy that. They copy the language. They copy these silly like New World Order words and news speakers, all well would call it. And have no one cottoned on yet that it doesn't matter how many tattoos you get, they all look fucking shit. You look like you've got a box of crayons, chucked it out to a load of 4 year olds, gone, right, kids, you've got free reign, do your best. They've decorated you all over, with like stick figures and fucking playaway houses. And then you've nipped down to the tattoo studio and gone, right, put that in ink. Sorry, folks. Yes, I have got a tattoo. This is not having a go at the individual. This is saying the further we move away from God, spirit, energy, source, whatever this thing is, that this great, wonderful experiment, the more that we try to cram ourselves into our ego and live in the red dragon, as it's referred to in Revelation, the ego body, the emotional self, the more problems you're inviting for yourself. And there's not many people out teaching young people how not to do this stuff. Oh, maybe they've all got to go through it to come out the other side. But yes,
I
there we
think
go, Clive.
it's understanding what the keys are to get out of the sort of trap that everybody's in. I mean, when I was studying people recovering from terminal illness, the ones that succeeded, um, I used to ask them, well, when did you know you'd got it right? When did you know you were winning? And pretty much all of them said the same thing. They said, I became grateful to the problem. While it was horrible, they realized that everything happens for a reason. We, as you say, we are all one, and that the worse the thing happens to you, the more chance you've got now to rise much, much higher than if you hadn't had the bad things happen. I'm sure you've had similar sort of experiences, but I've had sort of near-death experiences, and was incredibly grateful that I was still alive. I've had, I've been told I'm not going to live, and have, and what we need to be is grateful for everything, grateful for the sun, the rain, you name it. Gratitude is what happens when you realize what the lessons were all about.
Do you think, gratitude changed my life, Clive? It literally, it sparked. And when I talk about enlightenment, I'm not just using, parlance of our time. I genuinely mean I saw the light one day. I physically, my body biochemistry changed, my outlook totally changed, and also I stopped just being me. I became accompanied by something bigger than myself, which hasn't left me to this day, and which means that I know everything's fine and everything will always be all right. But the issue for me was, God, I had to get so low, Clive. I was so, it's mad when I look back, the experience I had to go through and the depravity I found myself in. I think, does everybody have to go through that? Can you just decide one day? Because I feel like I'm lecturing people on my YouTube channel, because I just tell them, very simple. Enlightenment is controlling your body's chemistry. That's all it is. It's called alchemy in the history of the ages. You start off as earth, and you got earth, uh, water. Water is ascension of consciousness. Air, fire, ether. Ether's the all, the everything, the net on which life is sprayed, sort of thing. God consciousness almost. And in alchemy, they refer to that, the raising of the consciousness through these levels of, or these frequencies as we now understand them, to be alchemy, changing base lead into gold. So changing something, pretty redundant into something highly kind of admired. And it's it is so simple. The past doesn't exist, so stop using it in any way to kind of identify yourself with. It doesn't exist. Like you can blame yourself for what happened when you were five, or that teacher touching you up in school, or we're not saying this stuff isn't horrible, but you fucking move on from it. Otherwise, you're letting the darkness win. It just cut a line and go, I'm not, never ever going to think about that again. Fuck it. I'll live for today and tomorrow and for me, and I'll create a great life. And at least I learned from all that stuff. That's it. Past doesn't exist. Be grateful for this existence and this wonderful universe, because if you was dead now, you'd love nothing more than to come back and have another chance at this. I mean, you probably wouldn't. You'd be eternal life. But what I mean is, in the Marines, you see a lot of young men killed in very horrible circumstances. Shot dead in Northern Ireland. In my case, my mate impaled on a fence, running away from the police. Two lads knocked off a train, pissed in Thailand, train surfing, chopped down by a bridge. The guy that I shared a room with, Dave, in the Northern Ireland conflict, we just shared a big room, but there was just two of us in it. He killed himself upon our return. All these people, and I think, well, Dave's probably not a good example because he obviously didn't want to be here, but the others, what would they give, Clive, to be alive again? Oh my God. And here I am shoving freaking needles in my arm, self-harming because I am fucking why? Why? And I thought, no, I'm going to start being grateful. You know, I like this. I like being me, albeit, I like the fact I got this chance. So past doesn't exist. Be grateful. And the third thing, and this is a grotesque failure on all levels, and take action. If you want what you want, first allow yourself to think it. Because most people's first reaction is, nah, I don't like that, don't want to do that. That's most, when you go skydiving, whoa, no, 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 no. I'm never, no, can't be like that. I'm like, yes, please. I will, anything life throws at me, I'll give it a go. That allows the thought to manifest into chemicals, which then raise your frequency or certainly allow you to meet life on that frequency. So when an opportunity to, say, climb Mount Everest comes along, you're already there. You're ready for it. You haven't gone, no, low frequency, I'm just down here, nothing, nothing. Your dreams are not going to come true if you won't even let yourself contemplate them. So take action and the universe gives you back tenfold. And that's what I did back then, Clive. Cut down on the drugs, started like looking after myself, started being grateful. And every morning I threw open the curtains. Instead of sleeping on depressed, I said, thank you, Mother Nature, for giving me this life. I really appreciate it. And that was it. I started glowing like Ready Breck Man. I physically went about my day. My biochemistry had changed. I knew that I'd connected with spirit, the essence of life, we'll call it. Some people call that God. I try not to use the word God because everyone thinks that you're talking about like organized religion, and it's the complete opposite. It's being free and it's being grateful. And so there's me on my YouTube channel. I tell people this, I tell people this, but people opt to stay in the fourth dimension in a lower state of consciousness. I don't know whether they're opting intentionally by not taking action, or whether it's just the way of life that you have to get smashed down to find this secret, that it's not given to everyone. Feel a bit of arrogant saying that, but I'm just trying to be honest, Clive. it's there for everyone, you know?
I had a couple of experiences that taught me a lot. Uh, the first one that came to mind is in the 90s. Everything in my life appeared to be going wrong. I could not see the way forward. And I've been sitting basically on the floor, feeling really miserable for a few days, one way or another.
Mm.
And the phone rings, and I drag myself to the phone. Hello. And at the other end, there's this incredibly sexy girl who's phoned me. And I catch myself changing from deep depression to overwhelming ecstasy in a microsecond. And I realized that it's all an illusion. You know, the state I was in, I was self-perpetuating it. And what I'd forgotten at that point is I was in a great state of fear. What's the opposite of fear? Well, it's love. And the answer to everything is love. And people don't realize that if they're in the state of fear, that that is a totally different state to the state of love. When you're in the state of love, everything's fine. When you're in the state of fear, nothing is fine. You think about the past and how terrible, you think about the future and how frightening. And it's when you catch yourself, if you're able to, you realize, here I am in a state of fear. It's becoming the observer, seeing yourself in this state of fear and realizing that 99% of everything you've ever feared never happened, for a start.
Mm.
And the fears you've got now are probably based on assumptions rather than fact. At one point in my life, about 20 odd years ago, I put a post-it note on the mirror which said, is what you're thinking true, or is it just an assumption? Because I was making assumptions in life, assuming that I knew it when obviously I didn't. And then, in the 90s, I sold a company and became, quite wealthy. And then 10 or 12 years later or something, I was down to two suitcases and nowhere to live. And, my ego was not good when I was wealthy. And it did seem to me that actually it had to happen for me to grow from it. I'm being grateful to it. I hated being poor, but I'm grateful to it now because it changed me like things changed you. The other thing is that, because I give health advice to people, and sometimes they say, well, I'll try. I say, look, if you try, you're likely to fail. If you just say, yes, I'll do it, now you're doing it. If you take a week off because you don't feel like it, you're still doing it. You've taken a week off, you haven't failed. But the moment somebody uses the word, I'll try, they're opening themselves up to failure. Better just to do it and take holidays.
Yes, absolutely. The power of words. Trauma is something you know, been researching so much. Um, yeah, I had a real sort of life-changing moment after rowing the Atlantic in January, December and January. I must just say thank you, Clive, for your generosity in providing me and Louis with our what do we call supplements? Is it
Yeah,
probably going to
yeah, nutritional
nutritional? Yeah, yeah, it was good. Thank you very. Yeah, it was
pleasure, pleasure.
really kind of you. Um, but yeah, it was funny. I've never committed to not drinking, which has always kind of meant that I'm walking through a field full of landmines, if that makes sense. Sometimes it can be good. I can have a drink next day. Wow, didn't we have a great night last night? And da 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 da. But quite often, I just find myself fucking it all up, Clive. And I think only someone out there that's had a problem with addiction maybe can understand what I mean. And when I met Louis, my rowing partner, I said, mate, if you want to drink, drink. I obviously can't lecture you or dictate what you do, but I'm telling you now, if you drink around me, I will drink, and it won't be nice. It never ends well. And So that was it. We just smashed the booze quite a lot. And he didn't. He's just, you know, sociable drinker. Probably being ex-forces, likes a few more beers than is healthy, but doesn't affect his life in any, you know, certainly doesn't affect his relationships and outwardly. Whereas me, when I'm on it, I'm sort of on it like 24/7. I don't have, I really, I only learned recently why it is. And it suddenly made total sense, Clive, when I learned. I just downloaded just so many audiobooks about giving up drinking just to learn more. Why do, you know, and and this book I got recommended. It said if you read any book about giving up the booze, read this one. It frames it in a totally. And I'd read Alan Carr. Alan Carr was great. He's like, just give it up. That's it. Don't, you know, it's not difficult. If you don't want to do it, just don't do it. And it's a great book. But this book, and I'll if anyone wants the name of it, you'll have to get hold of me, and I'll happily look through my Amazon account and find the name of it. But it said what happens with alcoholism is you have that drink and you get high, and then as it you start to, you know, you have another drink to get you a bit higher and maybe keep you there, and then you have another one to and then you sleep, and as you sleep you're coming down, and then you get to a state round about, you know, 4 or 5 in the morning where your body goes into deficit mode. You're in withdrawal from the alcohol, and you start to feel it. This is why people that drink a lot wake up wide awake at 4 o'clock in the morning and this kind of thing, right? And it's saying what happens with a problematic drinker is it's at that phase where you go, I don't like feeling like this. I don't want this hangover. I'll just go and have another drink. It's just easier to go and self-medicate again. And that's kind of my sort of score. And I've done that off and on, Clive, for many, many years. Um, many years. And if there's anything else, you know, lying around, I don't know, you know, painkillers, this sort of thing, then I'm not adverse to hoovering all them up as well. And to cut a long story short, you know, we finished this row and we hit Barbados, and it almost became an obsession for me to hit the bar. And it was literally the idyllic scenario of we rode into paradise, and we rode hard and we did well. We rode a very old boat and we got there in 50 days, which is pretty unheard of. We actually entered the record books as well. We were the first podcaster from an ocean rowing boat, and we literally rode into this very upmarket marina, and we rode into the bar. Literally, we docked at the pontoon where the bar was, and everyone sat in their deck chairs with their pina coladas. And we had to hand our passport in there, sign there to declare nothing to declare, go there to get our first rum and coke. and and I'm sat there with my um, I'm sat there with my son, and we're going through the videos. He took hold of our GoPro. We hadn't used it very much on the trip. We just used our phones, and that became problematic because a Samsung phone might be IP6 water resistance or whatever it is, but it doesn't last long at sea.
Oh dear.
But anyway, we managed to mainly use our phone, and my son's using my GoPro. He's filming everything, you know, kids. He's just got it on record all the time. And cut a long story short, I said to him, I clicked on this video and it was me lying on the pontoon, red as a lobster because I don't really wear, sun cream unless I could sort of help it. But when you're on the sea for 50 days, it's probably not, you probably should have put a hat on or something. But anyway, I'm there and I'm fucking shit faced. I mean, I couldn't recognize me. I didn't, I'm speaking in a way I can't even copy it because I can't recognize it enough to copy it. And I was like, son, why did you? And there's, everyone's around. There's people just watch me row across the Atlantic, like Tarzan. And in the next phase, I'm just lying absolutely drunk on the pontoon. And, you know, so I said, son, why did you take that video? And he said, Dad, I wanted you to see what you're like when you're drunk. So, oh,
Wow, what
shit.
a good son.
You know, and that hit home hard. There was a few tears after that, Clive, I can tell you. Um, that didn't make me feel good, you know. And I bonded with my son over this trip in a way that was just so unique. When you have to row away from your kid out of a marina in Gran Canaria, and it's Barbados is that way across the open ocean, 3,000 miles, and your son is crying his eyes out, and you've had to have a chat the night before and say, look, I didn't want him to come and say goodbye, Clive. I didn't want his last vision was me rowing away from him in case something happened. Don't get me wrong, for our friends at home, I'm not a sadist. You got to weigh up the dangers on these things. With an Atlantic rowing boat, so long as you're clipped on and you don't fall and bang your head or something, which, that's just an accident. So long as you're clipped on, you're pretty much, you're going to be okay. There's always, I say that because if you were to fall overboard from the boat and in the first few days, oh my God, trying to get your sea legs was just so hard. We was all over the place. You have to hold on to each other because you're just like, sorry, mate, I've got to grab you. And I was so close to falling overboard in the early stage, but I had my strap on. Strap on, that sounds rude, doesn't it? I had my leash, folks. Keep it clean in the bloody cheap seats. I had my leash on, and anyway, yeah, if you was to fall over, you're going so fast. Even if you're doing 3 knots, Clive, that's 3 mile an hour. No one can swim at 3 mile an hour. You know what I mean? It's just impossible. So anyway, I had this chat with my son, and I said, mate, listen, and I'm really finding this hard, Clive. This is unusual for me. Normally, when I do an adventure, I'm like running the length of the United Kingdom or running across the Sahara Desert. It's pretty mundane, safety wise. You don't have to have that kind of conversation with your son, is what I'm saying. And I said, listen, mate, I can't promise you this will be fine because I don't want my last words to you to be a promise that I didn't keep. But what I can tell is, Daddy will do his best, and I'm pretty sure it'll be fine. But my girlfriend said to me, like, you can't not let him come and see you off. I'm like, you reckon? She's like, nah, he's got to come and say goodbye to his dad. I was like, I said, hun, I'm saying it because I don't know if I can keep it together. And I'm going to have a lot on my mind. There's going to be press there. There's, the media. There's going to be hundreds of people. The mayor is coming out to say goodbye. The TV camera, everything, the radio. And I just think I'll be fucking crying my eyes out because I'm going to miss my boy. And also there is that element that, you know, something like serious could happen. And anyway, she made the right call, but it did mean that I literally rode out the marina with Louis, and My son was there just crying, and one of the rowing guys had his arm around him going, your daddy will be all right. Don't worry. I've done this. He'll be all right. And anyway, I also thought on that road, Clive, it brings it home. Do not ever take your family for granted, you know? Don't do it. Make that time for them. Plan your shit around them, you know? It's a bit kind of bad that I'm doing Everest because on that road, all I wanted to do was do stuff with them in the future. But this Everest thing, Clive, it's just, I've got to put it to bed, you know, that childhood dream. I haven't got to, but I've, ah, I've read so many books about it my whole life since I was, you know, when I was about 5, my dad had Chris Bonington's The North Face of Everest was a book on his shelf. My dad would speak so highly of him. My dad's not even like an outdoors type of guy, but he knew that Chris Bonington was the man, you know. He was the man. And so I've just read so many books, John Krakauer, Into Thin Air, and I've had guests on my show from the 1996 Everest tragedy. I think it was 96. I've watched every film about it, every single documentary. I've downloaded series after series about different teams climbing Everest. And, you know, but after I've done this one, well, then I want to ski to the South Pole. Shit, I forgot about that. But, but you know, it's just an interesting one. Getting back to the alcohol thing. Oh, geez, what is holding you back? Anyone out there struggling? I'll ask you the same question that was asked to me. It was by a life coach friend of mine. He said, Chris, what's holding you back? He said, don't answer it now. Go, just, I'll see you next week. Just have a think. I was like, okay. I fucking knew immediately, Clive, what was holding me back. It didn't take me a week to come up with the answer. And when I met him the week later, he said, come on then. What's holding you back? I said, it's the alcohol, isn't it? He says, glad someone noticed, you know? And how wonderful it is that we can be true with ourselves and the answers are all there if you want to. And you know, the trouble is for me, I always leave the door open, you know, always leave the back door open just to climb back in. So I've never actually said, that's it. I'm never drinking again. But I'll go through periods. I think 2 years was the longest I didn't drink. I'll go through quite regularly. I have 3 month periods. It's not an issue. Then I'll have a bunch of friends come down or we'll have an event. I recently did a big military reunion. There was 200 people there and I stayed sober, Clive. It was different. You do feel a bit out of sorts when you're so used to self-medicating, you know, you're so used to the social lubricant that is alcohol. But what I can say is after that row, I came back, I was in such a dark place. And I'm still in paradise, don't get me wrong. I'm an enlightened individual. I can't leave. It's like a curse. You can't leave paradise. There's only a one-way gate into it. But I also know my life's not firing. And I can feel a lot better in paradise than the way I'm feeling. And I looked at it and I thought, God, if you stop drinking, Chris, you just go to something else. You know, I've stopped drinking and I've gone to like chewing tobacco, you know, snus it's called in Sweden. I've stopped that and then I've gone to coffee. Then I've got off the coffee and I've gone to tea. You know, there's always got to be something. Even now, I'm off everything. I'm still on a decaf tea. It's just a psychological hook that's so strong. And so what I did, Clive, is I quit everything, right? I know a lot of listeners now, maybe even yourself, Clive, probably think it's extreme or you don't need, or what are you do? But I've looked at the hermetic seals, the hermetic principles, and I know what damages my hermetic seal and I know what keeps it good. And when it's good, I'm firing. And so I quit the booze, I quit the caffeine, I quit the carbohydrates, I quit sugar, I um, exercised every day, hot and cold shower or sauna and cold shower every day. Meditating more and more, albeit I'm a snatch meditator. I'll do it when I'm sat here. I haven't yet learned to take myself off in the room. Apparently, that doesn't work for everyone, and it's not necessarily meditating. Meditating is just being able to switch completely off. But so I've done that. I'm checking me alkaline balance, all the me acid alkaline balance a lot, and I'm well in the 7.25 range. And it was slow at first. Definitely 2 days after giving up caffeine, I was in withdrawal because I was freaking effing and blinding, kicking the cat. Not literally, folks, it's a euphemism. I'm just saying I was in a stupid place that would never kick my cat. I'm not a cat person, Clive, but I bought my girlfriend a cat because her cat died like a couple of years ago, and I knew she mourns her. I know, I thought I'll get her we got this beautiful kitten. She's absolutely. I'm not a cat person. I don't really. I've never. I had a dog when I was a kid, and I absolutely loved her. And my mother gave her away without asking me. And I had a tortoise who I was besotted by. It was my first pet when my parents were getting divorced and all that. Had her when I was about 6. I used to taught her how to swim and everything. And one day she stopped working, and that was just like the most traumatic thing in my life. I cried my eyes out for days. And so I bought this cat, and my boy and my girl decided to call her Ruby, which has just turned out to be like it's her name. How could we have thought of any other name? She's a Ruby, right? She's so beautiful, and have no clue how I got to talking about cats. But anyway, I don't kick them, folks, is the point I'm trying to make. And if you want to spread that rumor, I want to see proof of me kicking a cat, and I will publicly apologize on Twitter. Go through the humiliation ritual. But no, what am I saying? I wasn't pleasant to be around. I'm still not now. I'm really, you know, when you're not self-medicating with anything, whatever it might be, and you can self-medicate with coffee, it's probably one of the worst ones because it's so easy to drink and think it's not a problem, not realizing there's a reason why heart disease and cancer is so big in the West. There's reasons behind that. So that's what I did. I cold turkeyed it. Um, and I'm slowly getting there, Clive, and I can certainly say I'm back into a very good place now. Um, and it's lovely. It's lovely walking on air, feeling like you said, feeling the love. It's just pretty cool. Yes. So, not sure how we got to talking about my journey, but
Um, Let me draw you back to two things you said earlier. Um, at the start, you were mentioning pneumonia. And 120 years ago, medical doctors were taught how to cure pneumonia. That was normal. They were using a piece of equipment called diathermy, so basically a Tesla invention. And I've got textbooks from the 1920s, I think it is, giving you precise instructions about how to reverse pneumonia. Then, when vitamin C was discovered, doctors knew some doctors realized that you could reverse pneumonia very quickly with vitamin C. There's a fantastic video that anybody can find called Reverse Pneumonia in 3 Hours, which is 4 minutes long. Dr. Andrew Saul explains how he had bacterial pneumonia, very high temperature, people can die from that. And he took 2 grams of vitamin C, which is about half a teaspoonful, every 6 minutes. Right, every 6 minutes, 2 grams. Now, that's not easy to do. That's a lot of vitamin C. 3 hours later, his pneumonia had stopped. And the idea is it's like a race. If bacteria reproduces every couple of hours, if you hit it with something it hates, like vitamin C, faster every 6 minutes, you've outraced it. 3 hours later, he hadn't got the bacterial infection anymore. And I mean, doctors have known this, but it's deliberately kept from them. It's not taught. They gave up teaching diathermy for pneumonia when the Second World War started, or at least when it ended. They know when the textbooks were reprinted, they just left those bits out because cures don't make money. But with addiction, as you know, I've got this club called secrethealthclub.com. And if you look at the addictions page, there are so many answers which make cold turkey an easy thing rather than a horrendous, I want to kill myself thing. Because I got interested in addiction 30 years ago, looking at solutions for addiction. So I've been doing that. I mean, sometimes I'd use hypnosis. I mean, for instance, let's say somebody says, well, my big problem is socially. I don't want to go out to the pub anymore, around to parties, because I'll be too tempted. And one of the hypnotic techniques that I was taught was you get them into this state where they picture themselves at the party, in the pub, and it's full of cigarette smoke or whatever they want to do. Everybody's doing the drink or whatever it is. And they picture themselves in this sort of absolute bubble of happiness where they view themselves as being really happy in a situation where they previously thought they'd be unhappy. And if you can get them deep enough into a sort of hypnotic state, a suggestive state, and somebody wants to change, which is the key, then with that technique and a few others, I mean, the big techniques that I discovered were amino acids and selenium. You know, the on the Secret Health Club, on the addictions page, there are explanations about how dopamine works, how serotonin works. Dopamine is the one that gives you pleasure. So drugs, sex, gambling, whatever it might be, you get pleasure from a dopamine rush. But as you know, the more pleasure you seek, the more you want, because the brain down regulates dopamine to keep it at a standard level. So you take one drink, get a dopamine hit. Now you need 4 drinks to get that same dopamine hit. It's not good. So hence addiction. On the other hand, you've got happiness, right? Distinct from pleasure. The adverts would try and tell you that pleasure is happiness, but pleasure gives you a different set of brain chemistry, primarily serotonin. Now, you can't downregulate happiness. Sounds a weird thing to say. You can downregulate pleasure. The brain does that for you by adjusting your dopamine levels. But happiness, you can't have too much happiness because that creates serotonin. There is one thing, however, that depletes serotonin, the happiness chemical, that is dopamine. So the irony is that the more pleasure you seek on a neurochemical basis, the less happiness you get, which describes addiction.
Absolutely. Yes, that touches so much on something I learnt a couple of years back, maybe a year back, that pleasure seeking can't lead to happiness, which is kind of what you just described, didn't
They're,
you?
they're, they're just different things. Pleasure obviously is very pleasurable,
Mm.
but happiness is different. And so people don't realize that they can change from the fear state to the love state. If there's two states of mind, you can't be in both at the same time. You're either in the fear state or the love state. So it's finding the trick to realize when you're in the fear state and have a key to getting yourself out. For me, it was usually turning music up really loud, and I could generally snap. For others, it's watching comedy. They can find they find ways to slip back into the love state where they can now relax. But with that and addiction, it's realizing that, well, what do you need? Obviously, if you're about to try and give up something, well, that's the first thing you don't want to do. Nobody wants to give up anything. What we want is to be free from it. Right? Subtle difference of terminology. You don't want to give up. Nobody does. You want to be free from it. You want to be yourself again. So if you decide you want to be free from alcohol, free from a drug, whatever it is, it's realizing that, okay, you know what's going to happen. Your body is going to put you into DTs, delirium tremors, if it's alcohol, or cold turkey, if it's heroin or methadone or something like that. But what we all assume is that it is the lack of the alcohol, the lack of the drug that's causing all these unpleasant symptoms. What if it isn't? What if it's the other way around? What if your body is so intelligent that it works out that every day or every hour or whatever it is, this person is injecting or ingesting a poison, a toxin. They may be enjoying it, but obviously they're at one level, they're toxins. At another level, they're medicines, but let's just assume you're looking at the toxic part. You realize you've been overdoing it. So what the body does is it creates antitoxins. It's recognized you're putting a toxin in every day with tea, coffee, whatever it is, and the body creates antitoxins to help you as best it can cope with that. So you stop, you go cold turkey. The body hasn't worked that out yet. It's still expecting the hourly, whatever it is. And so the antitoxins are flooding your body still. And it's the antitoxins that make people feel really bad. That's why they want to shoot up again or whatever it is so they can get back to normal. So how do you turn those antitoxins off? With high doses of the right type of selenium, right? Yeah, there was one in the pack that we sent you, a little tiny bottle of
Yes,
selenium.
yes.
Now, I've had people who have taken not the normal dose, which is maybe one drop every 2 days or something, but they've taken 8 drops, 10 drops, 20 drops for 3 days. And they found coming off whatever it was so much easier with that one thing, because selenium turns off antitoxins, right? So that's a huge key. Then there's the amino acids. Now, how do you balance dopamine? You can do it with amino acids. And on the Secret Health Club, there's a whole video about how amino acids work on the brain. And it sounds complex, but actually, when you have it explained to you, like the dopamine serotonin thing, suddenly, oh, I get it. I see what's happening in my own mind. And so, again, high doses of amino acids just for a short time. I mean, one of my favorite stories is this guy. He arrives at my house and he is pissed out of his brains. It's the morning. And he explains that he doesn't need to eat food as such because 4.5 bottles of white wine every night give him all the calories he needed. But he was dying on his feet. I mean, looked dreadful. Anyway, I told him to take way more amino acids than one normally would. And that was the morning, so he took a lot then. I told him afternoon more, evening more. Rings me up 2 days later. He said, Clive, yesterday I had 5 meals. I thought, well, that's a bit of a shock to the system after. He said he'd got home on that first evening, got home, poured himself a glass of white wine, and he said he didn't feel like it. I mean, super quick. And he runs out of amino acids a few days later, and he goes back on the booze because I run out as well. Then he goes back on the amino acids, fixes himself again. I think he repeated that cycle 3 or 4 times maybe before he got it. And now he just takes a small quantity of amino acids every day, which keeps his dopamine, serotonin levels nicely balanced. Then there's magnesium, which is all about relaxation and happiness. If you're stressed, you burn up your magnesium levels. That's why people drop down dead at the end of a match or the end of a marathon or something. They've sweated out the magnesium, why people drop down dead in the desert. If people think, oh, it's dehydration, no, it's because they sweated out the magnesium and their heart couldn't beat anymore. Um,
Yeah.
so there are so many keys to helping with addiction. Those are just a few. There are several more. Fulvic minerals, a really good one.
Yes. Yes, you make some great points, Clive. One of the things I experienced coming off opiate medication after I damaged my back, I'd been on such a heavy whack of meds for so long, and when I came off it, uh, I thought I was in withdrawal, and I cut down, cut down, cut down. I was having a microscopic amount of this medication, microscopic, and when I tried to come off it, I just get this awful, like I was sleeping and I was just, I can't, I hope someone listening understands what I'm trying to say because I don't think you can put it into words. It felt weird. It felt like my body was trying to twist itself up while I was just, it's weird. Like you're possessed almost. It was just awful, awful. Um, and so I couldn't understand it, and it went on for ages, and I had this tinnitus, this buzzing in my, this ringing in my ears, this buzzing in my head, and I learned very quickly that the only thing that got rid of it was a sauna and a cold plunge.
Right.
So I religiously went to the gym every morning, and that's how I got into the, funny enough, the regime that I sort of like now, which is exercise every morning, and then I worked out what it was with a bit of internet search. I was experiencing something called long-term withdrawal, which means you've been on this medication for so long that your brain chemistry's changed. And when you try and come off it, it's not just a case of the, like you mentioned, that your body's trying to get back to homeostasis, if that's the right word. It's the fact that no, you physically change the receptors in your brain by bashing it with this chemical for so long that you experience these effects. And allegedly, from what I can see in the forums and stuff that I read, it's it's a horrible enough experience for a lot of people to go back on heroin or whatever
Yeah.
their opiate of choice was. They just can't stand this. It's torture.
Yeah.
And I was fortunate that I was able to keep up the gym to get me through the day so I could work and everything. And after about 18 months, 2 years, it kind of had gone, you know. But it is amazing. The human body will heal itself. It does take time. I did the same for two meniscus tears. I had meniscus tears in both knees from jiu-jitsu. And whereas most people would go and get an operation, which all they do is they clean up the fibers that have like torn. They don't, you can't fix a meniscus. It's a bit of cartilage like that. And I thought, well, I don't want part of my knee removed. I've already had part of my back removed, and I wouldn't have done that had I known what I know now. I just was naive, like a lot of people,
Yeah.
and I was in chronic pain for 18 months. But anyway, um, I healed these meniscus tears just simply by living as best I could. And within 2 years, they cleared up. I still can sense a dull thudding in them when it's like I've been for a run in the rain, which is I find quite interesting. So I can the body knows it that something was there. But getting back to our original conversation about Traore in the this revolutionary leader in Africa, yeah, absolutely, quite right. Africa is the richest continent on the planet in terms of resources. what they don't realize is when the you get white rule taken, decolonization, white rule goes, everyone thinks it's because Nelson Mandela, did 27 years in captivity, or 33, I think he did in the end. There's a little clue for you. Is no, it's the same deception being played. It's just a different facade, and this now it's black. It used to be white. The secret societies are all still doing their thing. The dark network is still networking. They're still the merchants. They're still playing everybody through the spiritual battle, through essentially control of the energy field, and keeping people in fear and striving for materialistic gain. And they've done a good job at it. This is why I mentioned the tattoo thing. Not because I want to have a go at the individual with tattoos. That's not completely not my point. It's how far away from God have we got? You know, we actually think that we become a better person by quote unquote desecrating our beautiful bodies, having an Instagram account which is just basic about like how can I sexualize myself enough and exude material gain to gain brownie points with people who are just even more lost than I am. It's crazy. It's Sodom and Gomorrah. I don't really understand that part of the Bible that much, but I do know that, you know, this is not the way. This is not the way. And when it comes to Africa, um, it's interesting. I love to see that there's someone there that's standing up for their people. There
Yeah.
was actually another chap very similar from a country called Germany who did the same thing, and it didn't end very well for him, let's say. Well, in fact, he did. He got a castle in Argentina, but putting that to one side, the cabal, they don't like their renegades, so it'll be interesting to see how long this guy's allowed to get away with this for. I'm looking across here, Clive, because I've got the other screen on. I can see. I mean, what a scam they pulled. They took Tesla's invaluable work, which was free energy and the protection of the planet, and they turned it into Elon Musk. Fake, false energy, a desecration of the planet. The resources need to make these batteries, the slave labor that goes into it, and the pollution that comes off the back of it to create a heap of shit that you can't drive on a ferry because of the fire risk, that keeps that they keep catching fire, that change you to an energy grid of sheer social control. What a bastard! And yet, and they branded it with Tesla's name. Tesla would be turning in his grave, wouldn't he?
Well, you would, but on the other hand, there is Elon Musk. We're all one, so we must be Elon Musk in some way. And it was pointed out to me that actually we've got to really embrace these people because Elon is doing an incredibly good job at being Elon, playing that role. Trump is doing an amazing job. Keir Starmer has woken more people up than you and I have, probably. Doing a great job at being the evil bastard. Um, but if there's nothing wrong, then it's time for us to change the people who are making the decisions.
Yeah.
Really pretty simple, I think.
Yeah, it's beyond a joke, isn't it, with Starmer now? I mean, geez, guys, he's cretinously stupid. And he's so clearly being blackmailed over these rent boys. It's so obvious because he's doing a Blair, isn't he? He's making decisions that just fly in the face of common sense and the public vote or the public, you know, public desire. We don't want war. Well, sadly, there's still some people that do, but it's crazy. Literally nothing's being done about these dinghies coming across the channel. Nothing.
No, no,
The immigration boats are all in fleet. You know, the what do you call it? The border patrol. They stay in port all the time. I know because I live in Plymouth. Their boats here. It's never out. I've never seen it go out. I mean, I'm not saying it doesn't, but they certainly have never rounded up a load of dinghies and taken them back to France, which should be their job. They certainly haven't deployed the best navy in the world. Fact, I'm not biased at all. And the incredible Royal Marine Commandos and the elite special boat squadron who could have round up these guys in 5 minutes, especially with the drone technology now. You only need a drone with a infrared camera on it. Put that up to see these dinghies coming across. Send the boys out there, intercept them. Sorry, you know, can I say kunta? Does that make me racist? Sorry, kunta, but we're taking you back to bloody Senegal. Um, crazy, crazy. Um, and then there's other aspects of it. There's other aspects, Clive, that make it confusing. I love my time in Africa. I love the people that I met. We got on great. I spent most of my time with Mozambicans, tribal Mozambique. Um, Met wonderful Africans that I've studied with in the UK and I've worked alongside and I've fought alongside Afro-Caribbeans in the Marines. It's you know no issues there sort of whatsoever. But I guess the issue is that it's an agenda, and it's agenda by the dark net, by the cabal, the dark network. That it's an agenda, and if it's their agenda, then I'm always going to do my best to expose it. I suppose, and not everyone that's coming across here is in a balanced, forward-thinking state of mind. I mean, I don't know. I've been in tribal Pakistan. That's that's a different animal, mate. Honestly, that really is. Jesus Christ, my mate tried to take a photo of the woman walking behind her husband. It would have made a Pulitzer Prize winning photograph. Jesus Christ, that guy he tried to get on our bus to kill JR, my mate. I literally just was absolutely incandescent that my mate had pointed a camera at his missus. And it was only because we had some Pakistanis on the bus, some very what you'd call middle class chaps that had come and introduced them. They were very honoured that they were escorting us through their territory and they invited us back for dinner and went to a top restaurant. They paid for everything. It was, and they were like, they just grabbed this bloke and they told him in no uncertain terms, fuck off, get the fuck back. And they got it. They understood in our culture that taking a photograph down the street is perfectly normal, right? Very weird stuff to see them dancing over ladyboys and groping each other and all. It just you don't want that in your street, Clive. You don't want that. You know, they couldn't understand that in the West, a girl can wear what she wants. They could not get their head around it. They were like, but she must be a slut. She's a slut, right? She's begging for it. And you're like, no, no, nothing like that. You know, it's that's just like normal. As a girl wants to wear what she wants to wear and show her legs off for the guys, perhaps, but not only to get recognition, not because she's putting it out there. And very straight. You don't want that in your street, Clive. You just don't. My girlfriend was working in a supermarket in Sweden. A Swedish girl I went out. We both worked. It was Oslo. We both worked in supermarkets in uh, Oslo, capital of Norway. And one day she was on her till. Two Sudanese guys come in with a like Kalashnikov or something. They pointed at her and said, "Give us all the money." Well, my girlfriend comes from a place that has used to have a zero crime rate until they invited it, over their borders. So she looked at these guys and she said, "Why?" She didn't even understand she was being robbed, Clive, because she's that naive to it, and yet they've had an open border policy there, which hasn't ended well. It's led to, oh God, I don't even want to say the crimes. It's disgusting, depraved, horrible. But yeah. So going back to your matey boy there, your Traore or Treyar,
Traore,
Traore.
Ibrahim Traore.
Yeah, I mean he's doing a good job. He's going to get a mass following. No doubt the cult will take him out as soon as they can.
I think his
Um,
following is already too big that even if they did, it would still carry on.
yeah, I'll look more into it. Um, I'll look more into it, and then of course, it is one facet of it. The way the dark network work is they don't really care about the stuff on the surface. They're doing everything through the energy. So even if this country gets itself like firing back on its feet and it sparks a movement across Africa, they don't care. They're still extracting energy from people. In this case, it will be through materialism. They can have their money. What do they want? Some more McDonald's? That'll go down well in a country that used to have a you know, zero heart disease. And should they have some more tattoo parlors? That could work. Do they all want Teslas as well? Get them the energy grid, the 5G, so that they really can be checked up upon. Social credit could be the way forward for them. Digital IDs. Do you see what I'm saying? It's like the club don't give a shit what.
Though, I think the argument that they're feeding off our negative energy is perfectly logical. That's what
Yeah.
it seems like.
Yeah, they even do it at the music festivals. People think they're going to like a concert and it's all about, it's not. To the cabal, it's energy harvesting. They're
Yeah.
putting out some sort of quasi-satanic lyrics, encoded into a harmonic, less than harmonics, I should say, because they adjusted the frequency of the music, so it's not universe music. It's not all to the pattern of nine number of the universe. It's been tweaked, so it's something slightly different. And you go if you're gullible enough to go to a Sam Smith concert and he's there in his thong and his Teletubby boots because it's all about children's stuff as well. You're gullible enough to go along and bow down to him. They consider that you're a muppet and they're just sucking up your energy. Yes, funny. Clive, I'm looking at the time. I'd love to chat forever, but with my Everest climb next year. Friends at home, if you want to find me, if you go to my website, christhrall.com, you'll find the details of my Everest climb. I'm climbing to shine a light for anyone struggling with mental health issues, as you can gather, I have. I particularly shine a light for our veterans because many of them, as lost as I was, the difference is that they will end up taking their own lives, and we need to be preventing that if at all possible. So if you want to come and support me, that would be brilliant. Thank you.
Well, perhaps I could suggest we could do another show at some point when you have enough time, specifically for veterans or anybody who's suffering from mental health issues, because there are so many things that I've learned. My brother, 35 years ago, committed suicide, and they put him on drugs for depression and stuff. So for a long time now, I've been looking at what makes people happy, and
Yes.
I'd love to talk to you again and ask you some more questions. I mean, presumably you're going to copy Wim Hof and go up Everest in your shorts.
Uh, I think you'll find he didn't go that high up. I'm not, no disrespect to Wim, who's a wonderful, wonderful gentleman. Um, it's quite interesting how things come across in the media. He's known as the guy that went up Everest in short. I doubt you could probably get past. Um, you might. Well, okay. Let's just start from the beginning. So first off, it's scorching sunlight on Everest.
Yeah,
It's so hot. You need a factor, God knows what sunblock to stop you being, frazzled.
yeah,
Secondly, you go up in a t-shirt most of the way, depending on the weather, obviously. If you're in a, storm, it's not going to be like that. So my friend's just done the longest climb of Everest, started with swimming the English Channel and cycling to India. And he said, Chris, it was just so hot. Every video of him in his tent, he's stripped down to the waist. He climbed in just a t-shirt and put his summit suit on from the top camp, Camp 4, to make the summit attempt. He said then, one of his feet got a bit cold on the way up. But so I'd imagine Wim probably, went to advanced base camp, something
yeah.
like something like that. I'm not saying that he is a good cold weather guy, isn't he? He probably could have gone up a lot higher, or probably, or maybe he did go up higher. I don't know.
But I wouldn't
But
recommend it.
no, no.
Well, fantastic. I so admire your guts and bravery. It's incredible, incredible. And hopefully you'll make fortunes for whatever the cause is, uh, for the Everest thing. And who's going to play you in the film?
Gosh, I don't think there's anyone's been born that's handsome enough, Clive.
Oh, yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, this is
Or,
like
or has the ego.
yeah. I'll be, I've got to play myself down for this one, haven't I? Maybe that Brad Pitt. Um,
Yeah.
you know,
But you
gosh,
may have to play yourself, dye your beard brown. You still look young, so you could get away with
I only do these things, Clive. Believe me, because it's easier than having a job.
it.
And I mean no disrespect to people that have a job. If you're happy, I'm absolutely envious because I used to hate them. I
Yeah.
hated the whole brainwashing employer setup where you can't say anything or you get fired or you get some disciplinary against you. Everyone's so cowardly that they literally go and report you to the boss for, you know, saying something inappropriate, and then they come and have lunch with you and they're all smiles like they're your best mate. And it's not that they're being two-faced or anything. To them, that's normal. Fucking hell, right? I can
Thank
tell
God we're
you,
not normal.
rowing an ocean or writing books or having a YouTube is it's just I take the easy way out, Clive. That's it. I'm not a hero. I'm not brave. I'm not nothing. I take the easy way out because I just think go through life the path with the, I wouldn't say the least resistance. You got the resistance is what makes you learn stuff. But yeah, sounds a bit contradictory, doesn't it? But yeah, no, not brave, not a hero, just someone who had a very damaged life that made the best of it. And that now I just want to do the things that I want to do.
Well, brilliant. As they say, you find the job you really love, you'll never work again.
Yes, exactly.
Well,
Yes.
fantastic, Chris. Thank you so much. And I wish you all the best and hope to speak to you very soon.
Yes, I'll look forward to that, Clive. Thank you very much. And massive love to all your viewers and subscribers. Remember, you're born a legend, you die a legend. Just make sure you realize you're a legend in between because there's a lot of fuckers out there.